Hello and welcome to Noobs in Progress. My name is Nathan, and here with me I have...
Ethan Murphy, Nathan Bennett's friend.
Hello, good sir. How are you this week?
Good sir, I am good. I am good. With so much to discuss.
Oh my god.
So much to discuss.
Oh my god. I have... in fact, I probably shouldn't have it facing you, but I have my notes, and holy pooper. Like, oh god, so excited. So for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Noobs in Progress. What we do is we watch a thing, be it movie, television, sometimes we may do a video game, whatever. And then we come back and talk about it. And this week, Ethan, would you like to tell everyone what we watched this week?
Sure. We watched Hamilton. We watched the it was Hamilton from 2016, but it was recorded and pretty much made to look as much like an actual kind of film or whatnot. And it was recently put on Disney Plus, I believe on July 3rd, so that on July 4th people could watch it and feel patriotic without feeling too slimy or whatnot.
Yeah, the original plan for that was that was actually supposed to be released in theaters. And they with COVID and everything, they just were like, what the hell? Let's just do this then. And that's what they did. And
yes.
So you watched it. You watched it right after we recorded last week, right?
I did. Oh, actually, yes, I did. Yeah. Because we recorded, we finished it around 7:00 Eastern time, and I watched it, I think about 8:00 Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw it a couple nights later. The warden and I put the kids to bed, and then we came downstairs and, turned it on and had it, okay. So first things first.
First is first.
I'm going to read a quick synopsis for it because I realized that we didn't do that last week, so I'm going to do it this week. Hamilton, an American musical, simply known as Hamilton. It is a musical with music, lyrics, and book by Lin-Manuel Miranda. It tells the story of an American founding father, Alexander Hamilton. Inspired by the 2004 biography Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow, the show's musical draws heavily from hip-hop as well as R&B, pop, soul, and traditional-style show tunes. The show also casts non-white actors as the founding fathers and other historical figures. Owing to this use of modern storytelling methods, Hamilton has been described as being about America then as told by America now. That is from Wikipedia.
Nice.
So what did you think? What did you think?
Oh, I loved it. Oh, that was lots of fun. Now, it was not short. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes, or 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It was not short, and I'm not usually a big musical fan, kind of thing. And the way that I watched it in I streamed it, not streamed it, but I watched it in simulcast, so to speak, with a friend of mine who lives on the East Coast. I live on the West Coast. He's on the East Coast, and I put on my headset and we watched it through our PS4s. Now, the thing about it is, though, is that we're trying to time it exactly right as we play it. Of course, it wasn't timed exactly right. And then also, partway through it, he couldn't, for some reason, his PS4, the Disney Plus stopped working on his PS4, so we had to go to his TV. And so I was hearing a slight lag on his TV as we're trying to do it. But I went back and watched it again a second time after that and make sure I got a clearer sense of what happened. And even having watched it multiple times now, I'm sure you know this from listening to the Spotify version of it. There's so much content, so many words are said. You have to hear it multiple times with subtitles on, in slow motion, while reading a Wikipedia dictionary and everything else to actually grasp everything. But it's great. Now, you have a very different impression of it. What did you think of it, having heard it thousands of times, seen it for the first time?
So many thoughts. I loved it. I'm this is essentially going to be the Hamilton Circle Jerk, but with
nice, well phrased.
Yeah, well, we've got the explicit tag anyway. I really did enjoy it. I had a really good time. I had seen it, or I had listened to it so many times that, like you said, I knew the words. In fact, the warden said to me, "I'm gonna have to tie your head down," because the entire first act, I was my head was just going like this. And I looked at her and I said, "It's either that or I sing." Okay. And she went, "Okay, yeah, just keep bopping your head." But yeah, I totally get what you mean, because like I've listened to it so many times I knew the words. In fact, we had a little bit of a different problem. Not so much me as the warden. She was having the trouble that she had heard the studio album so many times that the version that was on that is on Disney Plus is a little bit different, and by that I mean just inflections, timing, and like minuscule. Like you wouldn't really notice it all that much, but it was enough to throw her off when she was watching it. She still loved it. She still thought it was great, but it's like the thing that happens where you get used to listening to an album and then you go to a concert and you're like, oh, it's different. It was essentially that, just not as bad.
Right. Right. Well, part of what it was, and this is something I want to talk about too, because the nature of it wasn't actually a movie. It was they recorded it. It was actually at the play, and they had cameras set up, and I thought they did a pretty good job as far as directing and having close-ups here and there. They even had an overhead shot, which they never had, or a bird's eye view shot, which they never had in real life. You can't do that at a play if you go to a play. Where you sitting is what you see. The end. But they managed to do all these impressive things, and they did it in such quick time. And it's a huge ensemble cast, all kinds of movement, wall-to-wall scene, literally a moving stage. Yeah. And people that come on stage to move props around. It's like how to keep up with all this is mind-boggling. Oh yeah. So I was impressed with that, but also some of the pushback I've heard about this is just that you actually hear the audience. You actually hear them laughing at certain times. You hear them cheering at certain times. And I like that. It's because it is actually you literally are at a play, more or less. Yeah. If they remove that somehow, it would almost feel like you're behind a glass wall, or there's a separation between the two of you. So I like that it felt like actually being there. As much as it could be, you are there. But at the same time, it's a better production of it. Like the difference between watching an actual sporting event on TV, where you hear everything that happens, but you're able to see it, as opposed to being there and being so far away from the action. Yeah, well, and there's also precedent for that in our regular entertainment, like laugh tracks. You know, they've been putting laugh tracks in comedies for such a long time that, frankly, I like it more when when it's like there's a live audience. You know, I think a live audience is often, preferable to, okay, this is when we think they should laugh. And it's interesting because I'm interested to know, because this happens in plays. I've done a lot of stage plays, and this happens whether in comedies, dramas, whatever. There's always something that happens that the audience finds funny, that during the rehearsals, through the whole process, even through like half the run, nobody laughs, but for some reason the audience will find something hilarious. Sometimes it's a little spooky, and sometimes it's it's benign, but to the audience, for some reason, they thought it was funny. I'd be very curious to know, like, what that was. Now, obviously, by the time they recorded it, it had been on for a year. It had been on stage for a while, so they had, for the whole Broadway season, so they had figured all that stuff out. But I'd be curious to know, like, what were the bits that they found that the audience was finding funny that they decided to push. Like, obviously, Daveed Diggs, like, oh my God, like he was the comic relief of the show. Yeah, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about that. But yeah, that's a good point. The point you made as far as like laugh tracks or canned laughter, as they call it. So you ever gone online? If you get a chance, do this tonight. If you ever feel sad, just do this. I despise this show. The Big Bang Theory. I've made no qualms about this. Everyone knows this, and most actual nerds do despise this show for various reasons. But one reason I hate it so much is because the laughter is very fake. The jokes are very bad, and the laughter is very fake. If you get a chance, watch the actual on YouTube. They have it where it's the laugh track removed on the Big Bang Theory, and they'll say something like some of the literal jokes. Like Sheldon will say "bazinga," and he'll just say it, and he'll wait, and then you'll watch. What's his name? That actor. I can't remember right now, but you'll see him just stand there for literally 10 seconds in silence, and it looks so painfully awkward as they're all like, "Wow, wow, this is painful." So the idea of having, like you said, a live studio audience, where I love like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they used to actually have a live studio audience. And
Yeah.
sometimes what would happen is they would say something, and you could see them trying to move on to the next line, but the audience would laugh so hard they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And there's a very different energy there, very different kind of feeling when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
So with this, like with Hamilton, clearly the audience was part of. Like they always say that the theater has life, or has a. What's the line, Nate? Theater has breath. I think it's theater has breath.
Yeah.
You can definitely feel that. There are certain parts when George Washington first showed up. As he turned around, and the audience like cheering and applauding, I was like, "Oh, who's?" I had no idea what it was. Okay, who's this guy? And I realized, oh yeah, he's a badass. He should be applauded very much so. And then when Daveed Diggs showed up, it is literally like Prince, looked like the spinning image of Prince in his prime, as he was being hoisted around in a spinning staircase. I was like, oh, and the audience, you hear the woman swooning, and you hear the guys cheer. It's like, yeah, well earned, extremely well earned. So it was a lot of fun to experience that along with the crowd.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really liked about it is I was impressed because I wasn't sure. I knew I was going to like it, but I wasn't sure the level with which I was going to like it, because there was part of me thinking like, is this just going to be like listening to the soundtrack with visuals, you know?
Right.
But it wasn't. Like it really surprised me how much emotion and how much how much more impactful a lot of the I don't even think that's a word, but how much more impact those things, those scenes had. Like I know we're jumping closer to the end of, like, I'm jumping to close to the end of the thing, but there's a scene in Quiet Uptown where it's, you know, Hamilton's done the Reynolds pamphlet, he's, you know, the son has died, you know, it's just like, and it's a really sad portion of the show, and they're standing there, and Eliza quietly takes his hand, and it's representing that, like, that's her forgiveness, is you know, and they start singing forgiveness, and Lin-Manuel Miranda starts weeping, and I was just like, holy, because like it just, you know, and you know me, I'm, you know, like pretty much the whole second act, I was like, okay, let's get ready, let's watch this.
Right.
You know,
but for those that don't know, Nate's he's like 6'2", 6'3", huge hulking dude. He cries at the drop of a hat.
Oh God, yeah, it's sad, but
that's something that I'm guessing all the times you've heard the soundtrack. You may feel the emotion somewhat, but you definitely can't see it. You can't see Lin-Manuel's tears. You can't see. You can't see the small gestures. You can't see Eliza holding his hand, showing forgiveness. You can't see her turning around when she gets upset with him. You can't see between her sister and him, as far as the idea of the exchanges, that there is there's obviously some romantic entanglement there. It's the little things that obviously aren't. It's the subtext, visual subtext that isn't sung that you can't see.
Yeah.
Which is why, to get the full experience, you really do have to see the play, see the production.
And it's interesting, and it often gets brought up because it's the other most popular musical that is completely sung through, and it's Les Mis. You know, I went to go see. I had never seen Les Mis in a theater at all until the movie came out, just because it was never really it never really hit me at the right time. So I, you know, in my musical period, or being into musicals, it never really got to me. So I ended up just going to see it with the warden at the theater, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought that definitely having the visuals helped, and I actually was thinking that watching Hamilton, it would kind of be the same thing. Like it would be like, oh, okay, this is the visual, like this helps me along a little bit. But for this, for some reason, I honestly think it was because Les Mis was a movie. They had turned it into a movie, where here they did a really good job of recording the musical, and like you said, doing close-ups, bird's eye views, that kind of thing, to really add that extra oomph, and it just worked so much better for me than the Les Mis musical. I just thought,
part of what like you said, they're adapting a play to a film. So when so it's literally a transference of mediums. Yeah, that transference, whatever. You're going from one medium to another. So with this, it feels like you're just actually seeing the intended medium in a different way. The intended medium was a stage play. but you're seeing it through the lens of a camera, but you're still seeing it in its original form.
Mm-hmm.
You see that Les Mis with Hugh Jackman, and we can say Russell Crowe's singing, even though I don't think it was singing. It's pretty much his voice dying on camera. That thing is such a weird thing. It doesn't quite work. The only full production of Les Mis I've seen is the Liam Neeson one from the 90s, I guess it was, where it's not musical at all. It's just actual movie version of it. And it's really good, but it's a very different thing as far as it's no music at all. It's just actual story, and the story works fine. It's great. This was very much you get a chance almost as a fly on the wall to see actual not a recreation, but you actually get to see the play and it's intended for. So I think that kind of a transfer works really better. And I think if we saw because there are other versions, of course, like I've seen the West Side Story on the play on it's a movie version before, and it works pretty well too. But I think part of what made this so unique was that there was so much involved with the actual stage production. There was so much of all the dancers. Oh, by the way, all of them were in like incredible shape. Like, why are they all like the MCU characters? Some of the guys you could tell that they literally cut their the sleeves off their shirt just to show off their biceps.
Oh,
and the women the women you could tell they like do squats all day because their legs are like built like horses. I was like, how dare you? But historically accurate, no. But they all look amazing. But part of it was you could tell it was a very, very physically demanding role, and so seeing all the physical things they did really enhanced the experience.
Oh yeah, I had said that during the intermission, the minute intermission. I said, like, basically what they're doing is they're singing a half marathon is essentially what they're doing. Just the way they were running around the stage and just doing all these like amazing dance moves and things, and like, even, you know, there were certain parts in the show where, you know, especially anytime there was any sort of gunplay, the dueling and all of that, they would freeze, and like, you know, and a lot of times they would freeze in positions where, like, you know, I can barely freeze standing directly up and down. You know, if I tried to do that, I start to get wheezy after about a minute or two. They're freezing for like an entire song, and you're just like, Jesus God, you know,
right?
But
and
yeah,
they would do it in
amazing.
like full blown matrix provision. So they would there's a part where a person like kind of is leaning back, and then the stage wheel, it's like a weird stage wheel that moves around. The stage wheel will move around, and like so Leslie Odom Jr. is like firing, and like, you see him moving around, and the person's like falling back. It was his son that died first, right? That was his son that died.
Yeah, and that was with a different person who was firing the gun,
not Aaron Burr, but someone else. But so you're seeing this type of all these different things all these different elements that are put into play. You have to be athletic, or you have to have been trained. I mean, I know it took. So you know it's better than I do probably. I know that it took Lin-Manuel supposedly, after he did In the Heights, it's like 6 or 7 years roughly to write this.
Yeah, it was
took
a while.
2 years. Yeah, it took them years to write like the first couple of songs in of themselves. So it's a very long production. And then also once they started rehearsing, once they started getting people together, it took them like years to actually practice all these moves. And also you have to, because they're all singing. There's no like, you know, there's no Milli Vanilli going on, or Ashley Simpson for. I guess that's a more. That's not even a modern reference either. But there's no lip sync battles going on there. That's the best I can get.
Yeah.
These are all actors and singers singing in real time for real. So to be able to clearly sing while literally dancing and running your ass off for, like you said, 2.5, 3 hours is insane.
Yeah, it's nuts, and like. Just watching, and especially Lin-Manuel and Leslie Odom Jr., because both of them, like, they hardly got breaks through the whole thing. Like, they were just, you know, just going through, and both of them were like belting songs. You know, just it was awesome. It was just awesome. I just loved it. It was great.
The one thing that did piss me off though was that because they're wearing heavy clothes, they're meant to be historically looking clothes, period appropriate clothes. And they barely sweat. It's like, come on. As a guy who sweats sitting down in his apartment at night, I don't want to see them sweating their faces off. And later on in the second act, you see Lin-Manuel sweating a little bit, but that was also part of his tears. So it doesn't count as much. I want to see them all dying of sweat, and they barely glistened. So it's rubbing it on my face with their MCU bodies. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm curious though. So a buddy of mine that I simulcasted with, he's seen it twice in the actual.
Oh wow!
In Broadway,
Mm-hmm.
he's a huge theater nut too. What he was saying was how the experience is very, because when you actually see them and hear them in person,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually hear the different kind of inflections. Because part of it actually is it is so fast that
Mm-hmm.
you almost, when you first sit down, say, "Oh, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea
Yeah.
this was coming." I kind of knew, because from what you played for me, that the speed of which it was sung.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine what would happen if, like he was trying to tell me, was he first sat down with his girlfriend back in the day. They did not know what to expect, so it kind of caught them off guard, trying to keep up with this kind of spoken word
Mm-hmm.
rhythm and speed. Like, oh, it's a bit different. It
Yeah.
can be a little bit jarring or abrasive.
Yeah, it's really interesting. If you get a chance, if you haven't seen it already, the first time that Hamilton was ever kind of released to the public at large was when Obama invited Lin-Manuel Miranda for a poetry slam at the White House. I could be getting the event wrong, but it was an event about poetry, and they invited him to come because of his doing In the Heights, and there were some other things that had gotten the president's attention. So he invited him to come, and he decided, because he was in the process of creating Hamilton, he decided, well, since I'm going to the White House, why don't I sing the one song I've written for it? I think he maybe had like one or two others, but it was still very early in the process. So and there's a YouTube video of it, and he essentially sings the first song, the opening song, Alexander Hamilton, and he does all the parts and everything, and it's different than what you saw on the stage or listened to in the soundtrack. And I'm like, and it was one of those things where when you watch it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is something. Like, there's something here. Like, there's just like an energy in the room and the way the audience reacts to it and what he does. You can kind of see the seed of what Hamilton would become. And it's actually very interesting to watch. And it kind of gets you, like, if you had seen that, it gets you a little bit prepared, but still nothing. Like, Guns and Ships, holy crap. Like, the warden was telling me that so this is an anecdote that's a friend of a friend thing, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but apparently somebody she knew was doing a acting workshop thing in New York City, and Daveed Diggs showed up for the event and to help out, and it was with kids, and they were coming up with things to do, and he was in her group of people, and they were trying to come up with stuff to do, and somebody mentioned, maybe we should do like a rap or something. And they said, can anybody here rap? And he apparently very humbly, like, not like, oh yeah, but very like, I rap a little bit. And it's like, a little bit.
Right. The undersell of the year.
Yeah.
Sandbagging.
Yeah. It just, oh my God. So good.
Well, part of what you, so was it you that told me that story, or maybe someone else, but that story about when Lin-Manuel went to Obama in the White House and sang that song, because part of the song involves Washington, and then he's singing it to the first black president, and he's of course a person of color portraying a person historically, and there's also the picture of Washington in the White House. I believe it's actually where, from what I've heard, the story is the picture is actually there in the room somewhere too, and so there's tears shed because it's like the irony and the beauty of it all is just for all to culminate the way that it did. It's something that's bizarrely profound. So the way that's so like you said, if ever there was to be an omen to show you the potential, or just almost to show you how to forecast what was going to happen, things a glimpse of things to come, it's right there. The writing's on the wall, literally on the wall. Yeah, so to speak. So
yeah,
that's amazing.
It's just another thing that was interesting to me, and you bring up, we're talking about a time, the 2016, very different time.
Yeah.
And treading lightly, but I found it very interesting because what had happened with me is we had discovered it. Like early 2016, like we discovered it in, I want to say January, February of that year is when the warden and I discovered it, and we fell in love with it immediately, and listened to it constantly, and I think I probably listened to the soundtrack, at least a portion of the soundtrack, once a day, every day, for at least the second half of the year, up until early November. And then things changed, and it was a good, I would say, a good 6 months before I could again, because it was it was very like, okay, I don't want to be reminded that and it was interesting to me because seriously, after that had happened, it went from me listening to it, at least a portion of it, once a day, to me maybe listening to it like once every couple months. I would listen to portions of it. Particularly the Hamilton mixtape is actually one of the exceptions. I did listen to a lot of the Hamilton mixtape, I think, because the Hamilton mixtape was kind of created in that aftermath. So
what's the Hamilton mixtape?
I had texted you about it. It actually was a it's a soundtrack. It's essentially the I don't even want to call it the editing room floor stuff. Like, some of it is stuff that were songs that he wrote for the musical that never made it in. But then some of it is just other singers, like the Roots. The Roots actually did. The Roots did a couple songs on it. I think there's a bunch of other famous folks did different songs on it. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Definitely check it out. It's really good. But it was kind of created in that aftermath, so it addresses the aftermath. Like, there's a whole song about the immigration and everything and what was going on, because that was right in the thick of all the crap of what was happening. Right. And so I listened to that a lot, because it was kind of like, oh, this is like Hamilton in dystopia. Okay.
Yeah. Dystopian Hamilton.
Yeah, exactly. And but then this time was actually, honestly, the first time I think I've listened to the soundtrack from beginning to end, or seen it beginning to end since that time. And watching it, listening to it then and watching it now in like these years, it was very surprising to me. And particularly with Burr, because when I would listen to it before, I'd be like, Burr, just get off the pot, dude. Just pick a side. Let's do it. And like now in the current, I'm like, I'm like, not that I'm like, just, yeah, I want to pick that side, but the standing back, the not wanting to make an action to show your hand. I'm like, I don't hate him as much anymore.
You can relate to him for
exactly.
what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, too, watching, because obviously Leslie Odom Jr. is a great, amazing actor and everything. And I hadn't seen him in this before, but I imagine if you just hear Aaron Burr or Leslie Odom singing his part, it's not as impactful, to quote your word, as is actually seeing him, seeing the character, the struggle he's going through, and seeing kind of the negative arc in a way he goes on, and the journey he goes on. Because also at the very beginning, him and Hamilton were friends, which, as they're portrayed, like he wasn't trying to be a villain, and also he killed Hamilton in a duel, a fair duel. It wasn't a murder behind his back; it was actually a fair thing. So he's not a villain as much as he is an antagonist to Hamilton in this sense. Yeah, and it's a very understandable, relatable character, like you said. And I think also listening to, I imagine, if you saw this production or heard it, in 2015, 2016 when it first came out, at that time compared to seeing it 4 years later now, it's like, wow, what a very different world, but also you have a very different impression. Things have changed so much. So it's like, yeah, these songs have a different resonance than they once did. Even though it's the same words, it's a very different impact on you.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest, the biggest things for me in the difference is watching it back then, listening to it back then. We, especially, privileged old me, I was like, I knew of, the struggles of people of color, and I found the topics and things that Hamilton was trying to address, as well as other points of pop culture, being very interesting and also something that was of a concern of mine. But it was a different world, where now watching it and like the song, the one about New York where they're talking about, like it's greatest city in the world and all this stuff is happening. Isn't this wonderful? Back then it was like, oh, that's a good, nice, catchy tune. And now it's like, no, it's not. Like, because back then they were at a flashpoint in history. And when I was listening to it a couple years ago, we weren't. Now we are. And we're at a flashpoint in history. We're on a powder keg. And it could explode, and we don't know which way the shrapnel's going to fly. And and this is a musical about a time like that. So watching it in a time like that is like, okay, this is fascinating and interesting and holy shit, like
right. And that's the idea was, like you said, at 2015, 2016, it was almost like that you were at a time of peace and hope, and everything seemed great and then only getting better in some sense. Now it's almost like it's a time that it seems like that production is like a rally cry. Because it literally was like that's the whole point. This and like that play 1776, another wall-to-wall, well, not wall-to-wall, no, that's not true. Another musical involving the revolution with atoms and whatnot. Yeah, these are both rally cries, and if you, depending on when you listen to them, if you listen to them in a time of quote-unquote peace, as opposed to a time of of uprise or a time when a time of change, it can have a completely different. You can have a completely different perspective on it. Yeah. So I watched 1776 and Hamilton during this time, during the quarantine, during the powder keg era, so to speak. So I saw it with very different eyes probably than you did, or when you listened to it initially. Yeah, with very different ears. So, but I think that's the point. I think that's why they released it there.
Yeah. And I think the fact that I think it can do a lot of good. In the way it is, because it taps into a lot of things. Like you bring up 1776, which I find interesting. I was actually in a production of 1776, a local community production, and
who'd you play in that?
I was Witherspoon. He's a Reverend Witherspoon. He was a representative, I think, from New Jersey, I think.
Exact state.
Yeah, he was an actual person. Like that's one thing about both. But actually, both. I don't think either musical had a character that didn't actually exist in history. Right. Other than,
his name was John Witherspoon.
John Witherspoon, yeah.
Which is interesting because the actor, I always think of the actor John Witherspoon, who was, of course, Ice Cube's dad in Friday, but the actual statesman, John Witherspoon.
Well, it's interesting because so I'm very familiar with both plays, and it's interesting to me because 1776, I think it was written in the 70s. I think it was I think they were playing off the whole bicentennial stuff that was coming up. Might have been earlier. I only researched Hamilton. I didn't research 1776. But
it played and debuted in the 70s. So it was either written in the 70s or the 60s. So yeah.
So but looking at that and then looking at Hamilton, like. That is, and especially like the songs, like there's a song, what's the song? Something to rum, molasses to rum.
Oh yes, the rum, right?
Yeah, it's about the slave trade, and 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 like looking at that, there isn't a person of color in that play, in 1776. Hamilton, now admittedly the historical figures that they were portraying weren't people of color. But every character in the play is played by a person of color, and it was so interesting to me, and that's why if you get a chance, do look up the Hamilton mixtape, and there's the rap battle number 3, which is essentially, you could tell it was Lin-Manuel's version of Molasses to Rum, and it's a rap battle between Jefferson and Hamilton. And it's over a Quaker delegation, and Benjamin Franklin sent a thing to Congress saying, end the slave trade, end slavery, and Washington basically said, okay, come on, let's debate this. And holy crap, it is an amazing song. I see why they cut it. I wish they hadn't, because they couldn't really, because the way the song was written, it didn't fit within the timeline of the other stuff going on in the show. But oh man, like it just it's just, you know, and
But
it brings
also
up. Well, go ahead.
that's incredible if that they were still able to produce that high quality of a song and then still had to cut it. It's like,
Oh yeah.
damn, I couldn't imagine. Yeah,
Well,
it's crazy.
the only reason I can think of, and I don't know, I'd have to look into it, but the only reason I can think of is there's a line later on in the song, like it's a short song. It's like the other two rap battles; they're not very long, but in the end, he says, the final line Hamilton says is, you know, Hammond and Hawn while you're hee-hawing with Sally Hemings, and
Okay, that's
and it's
yeah, it's like that's the most best way to portray Jefferson.
Yeah, it's a great line. But then at the end, Washington goes, you know, do you really want to bring, you know, infidelity up? Like, are you really sure you want to go there? And but the thing is, it doesn't fit within the timeline of the play because the Reynolds pamphlet bit happens after Washington says goodbye.
Yet.
So
that reveal hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
So I think the way they put it together, I think they were like, yeah, we can't fit this in and make it work, and let's just the show's already 2 hours and 45 minutes. Like,
yeah, it wasn't short. It wasn't brief.
No.
Right. That is interesting. But I love. I mean, we really haven't talked about too many specifics. So one thing, like, I want to get into. I love the idea that they had the rap battles. They don't call them rap battles. They have a debate. They say let's debate this.
Yeah.
And it's literally a rap battle. Through our present eyes, we know exactly what that is, and they are portraying it in that exact manner. But they call it a debate.
Yeah.
So pretty much back in the 1700s, that's what it would have been like.
Yeah.
Debates would have been basically rap battles. I love those to death. Another thing was you mentioned the idea that it's pretty much the 99% all people of color for the cast. However, there's one white guy, one bold-faced white guy, which of course is the monarchy himself, played by Jonathan Groff, whatever.
Yeah.
And because he first came up, I believe he came up right after Washington, and I was talking to my friend, I was like, oh my gosh, I saw Washington, I was like, oh, that's my favorite character. And then I saw John Groff, and I was like, oh, that's the king. I was like, oh, that's my favorite character. And then I saw W. Diggs as Jefferson in the second act. Like, oh, he's my favorite character. So those three characters, I was like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
The way that John Groff, because he's actually around on stage that much. He's only on, he's like 3 little parts or so.
Yeah.
But his parts are so insanely awesome.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the close-up when they have him in the first time when he spits, I was like, perfect.
Oh, yeah.
It
like
works
the
perfectly.
little...
All of it's planned.
Oh, yeah. I loved his eyes. I loved his eyes. Like
his eyes, he barely blinked.
Yeah, I know I would be shocked if he didn't, like, well, obviously he did it on purpose, but I'm sure he did it because King George ended up going crazy in his later life. So I think they played on that. They basically was like, he's nuts, make him nuts. You know, like,
yeah. Right. But he did it so. I mean, I loved it. Also, the little da da da. I'm sure you and the warden did that in the car for years. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get copyright strike. But
it's worth it. Every penny. But it was amazing. I loved. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And the thing was, it was, for the most part, like one take, or maybe a couple, but it was just a close up basically of him, of just his face. And as he walked out there, again, you hear the audience kind of cheering because they know what's coming. I was like, oh, what's this? And it was so well done. I love the portrayals of these characters because they are characters. History is full of characters.
Oh yeah.
I loved when he came out there. Obviously, I loved the entrance of Jefferson. He has the best entrance of all time. I loved how Washington's entrance is that he's standing there bold and he turns around slow like Batman, talking to Alfred almost. I love the introduction of the two sisters and then their friend Angelica
and Peggy.
Wasn't a sister.
No, it was the three. It was three sisters. Yeah, Peggy was the third. That's a bit of a meme.
She's a sister too. Okay.
Yeah, she's a sister. Yeah.
Okay.
But in fact, it's a bit of a meme in the Hamilton world and Peggy, because that's the way she. Yeah. In fact, there's one. There's a making of Hamilton that's out there, and at the very end of the credits, it's like for PBS or something. They did a making of Hamilton or a back, whatever, and at the very end of the credits, a like image of Peggy pops in and goes, and Peggy, So yeah,
It's like the perfect like button.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a bit of me.
It's so cool.
It's funny how she's the sister that they kind of don't focus on, despite the fact that she was like freaking badass. Like she like there was a point in time, I think it was, I don't know if it was during the war or something, where like the Schuyler family were like caught in a place, and like she fought people off with an axe. Like she was insane. Like she was crazy. Awesome. But she was, like,
love it. There should be a whole play just about her.
Yeah.
There should be a comic book, graphic novel that I will write about her tomorrow.
Yeah, oh God. Well, I love the Schuyler sisters. I think Renee, Ellsbury, I think is her last name. She's the one that plays Angelica.
Right.
Yeah. She,
God.
Right.
Because I've seen her other stuff. I've seen her lots of other stuff. She's a very
her voice is amazing. Like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And Eliza, I can't remember her name. I did research. Honestly, I did.
No, well, part of it is too is that you just get so lost in the characters. Sometimes it's hard to go back. What's the actual real life person's name? Yeah.
I really loved what they did.
They all did a great job.
Yeah, they did a wonderful job, and I loved how they did I was very interested to see how they did because I had heard Helpless, which then leads into Satisfied, and Helpless is Eliza's version of meeting Hamilton, and Satisfied is Angelica's version of meeting Hamilton. Both of them falling in love with him, and I was very curious to see how that worked. And you could tell from when you're listening to it, there's that like sound in the music. So I assumed there was some kind of reversal thing. That was amazing. Like the fact that they were like they reverse timed back to the essentially what happened in Helpless. And, and all of that. And then, going through like, oh, this is Angelica's side of the story. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. I thought they did a really good job with that.
And what I liked about that, too, is it felt like a parallel to Aaron Burr's story with Washington. Because essentially what it is that it's Washington, it's a love story of, in a different way, of Hamilton and Washington and Burr on the outside and Eliza and Hamilton and Angelica on the outside.
I never thought of that.
I saw the So I saw the parallels. The parallels in the way. If you go back and watch it again, as far as the direction, there's some things that seem, or staging, it seems similar to that on purpose. Like, oh yeah, this is. Two twists, or trois, whatever they are.
Yeah.
French.
Lafayette. That's very interesting. I never caught that. One thing I did catch with this, I caught it very early on because because I've done theater, it has been hammered into me, never face up stage. When you're on stage, never face up stage. It is not a good thing. Right. You are closed to the audience. And go
ahead and give a quick for people that may not know what that means. Explain
okay. So when you're on stage, when you are given your direction on stage and where to move, it's known as blocking. You are to try, unless you have a very good reason, to be open to the audience. And what that means is that you're at least angled towards the audience. The front of your body and your face is angled towards the audience. If you are facing profile to the audience, so you're not looking at them, you're looking at somebody else, your voice could potentially get lost. And especially if you're facing upstage, which is towards the back of the stage, your voice could get lost in that way. So you're never, and that's known as being closed to the audience, and you're never really supposed to be closed to the audience. And it caught my eye almost immediately that Burr is almost always closed to the audience. And I noticed it almost right away, and then it hit me. I guarantee you it's because his character, the whole thing of his character is that he's close. He keeps everything close to his vest. He never reveals what he's doing. So he almost had the reverse, where he only was ever open to the audience when he had a good reason to, when he was singing Wait For It, when he was doing The Room Where It Happens. Those, and you also notice later in the musical, he gets more and more open to the audience because he is opening up, to go for what he wants, because he's seeing Hamilton do it and getting what he wants, and he's like, well, I guess I'll do that. So yeah. Right.
And there are other things too that are brought in the visual medium. I mean, you can still, because they had him mic'd up, so you can still hear him.
Yeah.
But as far as, like you mentioned, the blocking, in all the duels too, or at least the duel I remember with Burr and Hamilton, Burr is sitting in the back,
Yeah.
and Hamilton's sitting in the front. Almost again, it's portraying him like he's in the shadows, or he's the bad guy, or he's the antagonist. Because from the perspective of this production, he is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, he's always blocked going upstage. He's meant to seem there's a you're meant to be meant to be a distance between you and Burr. They're portraying him as a bad guy. You're not supposed to relate to him as much. Even his wardrobe, he wears predominantly darker colors. So so they're trying to, as best they can, show you, yeah, this is the guy in this view. Even his opening number where he says, "And I'm the fool who shot him," or something like that, right?
Oh yeah, I'm the damn fool that shot him. Is
and
one
I'm the
that,
damn fool that shot him.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then it cuts into the actual production. So it's kind of like they're, from the perspective of this play, it's showing you, it wants you to feel like he is the bad guy.
Oh yeah,
regardless of history or everything else, it's just from this production.
And he even has a line in his last song in the musical. He has the line, "I am now the villain in your history."
Yes.
And I find that very interesting, the way they did that. I thought it was so well done, so well done.
Right. I mean that old expression that history in and of itself is fiction, because it's written by either the winners, or it's written by those who want to tell a story the way they want it to be remembered. Mm-hmm. So,
well, yeah, and that's even a theme in the show. Who, the phrase "who lives, who dies, who tells your story," and that's one thing that Washington is trying to get across to Hamilton, which is you don't have control over that. Like, you have no control over who gets to write your story, and I thought that was really interesting. I did notice, and I would bet money on this. At the end of the song, "Teach Him How to Say Goodbye," where Washington is basically it's the song about his last his last speech that he gives.
Oh, right, he's raised with all black.
Yeah. And at the end of that song, when they send him off at the end of that song, and it ends, and they do the low shot of Chris Jackson just up at him, and he's crying. I guarantee you that was Chris Jackson crying. That wasn't I'm acting as scripted. George Washington crying. I am Chris Jackson crying. I guarantee you. He used it. I'm sure he was like, yeah, this is Washington crying. I'm sure it is. But I'm sure it was, because again. What's that?
What makes you think? Because I generally pretty much believe you. I'm curious what makes you think that Chris Jackson, the actor, would cry at that moment.
Because it was 2 days before the end of the run of the show. He knew that he had 2 or 3 more times of singing that song, and that was it. And and that was on my mind the whole time I was watching, especially the really emotional bits, because they seemed like I would be interested to see, or I'd interested to know, like if there was as much emotion. I'm sure there was. These are Broadway actors. These guys are phenomenal. But I think there was probably a little bit extra poof in there, because all of them.
I'm 100% sure there was.
Yeah, because I know what it's like. Like, I know what it's like when I'm part of a show that I really love, and I would love for it to continue on. And there's that, like, and any time a show ends, it's bittersweet. Like, it's a bittersweet thing.
Of course.
Sometimes it's more bitter, sometimes it's more sweet.
Right.
I guarantee you, for them, it was probably an even, because singing a marathon. But
it's exhausting.
Yeah, like, I'm sure it was like they were like, hey, I'm taking a month off. But yeah,
you can't do something like this to this scale without. You become a family, a hardcore family.
Oh yeah,
of these people.
Oh yeah,
and also they were aware of that they would never be in a show like this ever again. This is a once in a lifetime, once in a generation or so type of thing. And B, to think they become even in his best days, I'm pretty sure Lin-Manuel Miranda, when he's making this, didn't think it'd become the huge mega hit that it is.
Yeah.
How could you ever predict that? It's impossible. So there's so much joy and so much mixed in there that it makes perfect sense that they'd be bittersweet, but lots of sweet, lots of sweet. And you're right. Part of the things too was, like, I found out, maybe again it was you that told me, as to how Jonathan Groff, he had gone on to do something else. It wasn't. I don't think it was Mindhunters yet. Maybe it was, but it's something else. So he wasn't at this point in the production. He wasn't playing the king. He came back to play the king because they were filming it and everything else.
Yeah.
And so part of it, I think the reason why the audience was going crazy when it first came out there was because like, oh, John Groff's back.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there probably were some other people that they may have left and came back for this too. So it was a one big hurrah to see all the originals. And I'm sure that was emotional. There's no way that wouldn't be emotional.
Oh yeah, and also it's on Broadway it's not uncommon for like, people who were leads in the original cast or what have you, or if there was a famous person in the original cast like a Hollywood celebrity in the original cast, that left and went to do other things, it's not uncommon for them to like pop in for a weekend or whatever. Like I know when I saw Chicago on Broadway, that show had opened with BB Newworth in one of the leads, and the weekend I went to see it, she had just popped back in and she played the other lead. Like she went and she was playing I can't remember the characters that she played, but anyway, so that's pretty much my thoughts and feelings on Hamilton. I absolutely loved it. Had a great time.
I love it.
I'm really glad that you did too, so we can still be friends. But
well, of course. And the thing is, I knew pretty much I was going to enjoy it. I knew that there was no way it wouldn't be entertaining as hell.
Yeah.
I knew that much.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I did. Like, I don't know that I definitely loved it. I don't think I loved it as much as you, simply because of the fact that I couldn't. It's impossible. It's impossible to love it as much as you do. But I did really enjoy it. I did love it. It was a lot of fun.
It hits me on a couple of levels. It hits me on the musical level, and I'm a theater geek. It also hits me on the history level because I'm a history geek, and so I've got that. And then also I am a fan of rap and hip hop, so it hit me on that level. So it just hit me on multiple levels. So I was just like, me love this lots. So I really can't. It was destiny.
Well, part of it too is it's destiny, and that destiny's been in your veins for at least the past like 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah.
For me, this is very new. So so I can't. It's like if you are to get married to someone that you just met, or you're marrying your love of your life after 4 or 5 years. That's kind of the difference.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
So. Okay, well,
and one last thing before we wrap it up entirely.
Sure.
For those of you who don't know, BB Newworth is in fact Lilith off of Frasier. So
Yes.
if you can imagine Lilith in Chicago singing her ass off.
Yeah,
Good luck with that.
God, it's insane. She was amazing, and like when the one she played, the one lead she played was the Renee Zellweger in the movie. That was the one she started when the show started. And but when I saw her, she was playing the Catherine Zeta-Jones role, so the really sexy role. And
yes, yeah.
Oh my God! Like and this was years after Frasier. This was like Frasier had been like, well, definitely Cheers. Cheers was the one she was in a lot of, but like this was and she comes out on stage, and I'm like, BB, wow, that's BB Newworth. Yeah, it was nuts.
You wouldn't. There are pictures online. You can see pictures of her too. You wouldn't. She's unrecognizable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, and she was amazing. It was awesome to see. But okay, so any other thoughts before we wrap up and we wrap this puppy up?
Yes, still my favorite catchphrase. Wrap this puppy up. It sounds like you gotta eat your dog. The thing about it is of course, as we said before, this episode of Noobs in Progress would be very much a circle jerk of something we both enjoyed pretty much thoroughly. There's another episode you guys are gonna hear pretty soon where we don't like the movie we see, and we imagine that there's plenty of movies we're going to revisit from the past due to either context or whatever reason, that as we visit the movies that are lauded so much by crowds from the past with nostalgia goggles on, that we may not like. So this episode, we want you guys to remember that we're not horrible, cold-hearted bastards. That we do like things, no matter what may come up later on in other episodes.
Yes, yeah, we're we'll let you guys know next week what we're going to be watching the following week, and I'm sure we're going to run into one where we both didn't like it. I'm sure we're going to run into one where one of us did like it and the other one didn't. And
those would be fun. Those would be the fun ones.
Yeah, those are going to be the real fun ones. We're going to be like, really? You like that shit? Anyway, so
Marvel? No.
Yeah, no, really? What? But yeah. So thank you all for joining us this week. No gaming afterwards this week. We both have stuff to do. Ethan has COVID dates to go on, and I have sleep to
No,
get.
it's that. I'm getting ice cream because I need to lose weight. So this weekend is the last weekend to kind of like binge on Purge, a whole bunch of fun stuff. So I'm doing that. Yeah.
Okay, it's like I need to lose weight, so I'm going to get ice cream. Oh, okay.
Wait,
I want to go on that diet.
No, it's the Purge. I have to. Just 2 scoops and you lose weight. Wait, what? How? But no, I have to get some ice cream. Yeah.
Yes. Well, oh, there's so many jokes I can make right now, but I'm not gonna.
They're all.
So anyway, thank you all for joining us this week. Like, subscribe. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us here on Twitch. We're going to be here on Monday night doing Creativity in Progress, which is our other show where we get together and do a writer's room. And we got other stuff going on too, so check us out at www.thecipnetwork.com. And thank you again so much, everybody. And y'all have a wonderful day.
Johnny Sins.